Bryce Harper, now a member of the Phillies, agreeing to a 13-year, $330 million deal. Let's welcome an MLB Network insider, Ken Rosenthal, who has been all over this as well. And Kenny, just to pick up on where Bill left off here, it seemed like L.A. and San Fran, they were making very strong pushes late. How did Philadelphia get this done?
They offered the most money. And that was always what was going to decide this. For all the smoke, all the things you heard all this time, Bryce doesn't want to play in Philly. Bryce doesn't like Gabe Kapler. Guess what wins? The highest offer. Guess what usually wins in free agency? The highest offer. Now, there are some interesting things here. And yes, they get the record guarantee, $330 million, surpassing Giancarlo Stanton's $325. But as you guys have said, it's spread over 13 years. So the average annual value, that's $25.4 million. That's like the 14th highest in history. So clearly they sacrificed AAV to get that big number, to get the record. Now, there are no deferrals, and that helps, of course, the overall value of the contract. And the idea of no opt-outs, well, I was told by one source that Bryce didn't want an opt-out, but immediately heard from others in baseball saying, What happened was the Phillies said, if you're getting this 330, you're not getting an opt-out. That's the trade-off that occurred. I don't know that we'll ever have the exact truth there. I'm sure there will be dispute over that. But clearly the Phillies were willing to go to 330 if they got the commitment from Bryce that he would be there. And that, of course, includes the full no trade as well. So it's a fascinating deal. It's a huge day for the Phillies. We've all questioned whether they actually would spend the stupid money. Remember, when they didn't sign Machado, their GM, Matt Klentak, said he exceeded our valuation. And that led many to believe, well, maybe they're not going to value Bryce Harper at that kind of 300 to 350 million category. Clearly they did, but they got the term they wanted. Spreading it out gives them much room under the luxury tax threshold in future seasons. Of course, we don't know what will happen in the next CBA, but presumably they think there'll be a threshold in place.
So, Kenny, what does this do now to the narrative that was building in terms of the players and these long-term contracts going away? Bryce gets 13, Manny gets 10, and we just saw Nolan Arenado sign an extension for 8 years. How does this affect the narrative about long-term contracts no longer being in vogue when we now see a 13-year deal to top off what we've seen this offseason?
Fran, as we said all along, Harper and Machado were extraordinary free agents. Why are they extraordinary? Because they're 26 years old. And that's why I wrote and others said that 10-year deals and up for these guys were justified. They're young enough. They're not signing at 32 years old and taking the deal through 42. No. Bryce Harper's deal will expire at age 38 when, if he's still, he should be reasonably productive. So from that perspective, these are elite players at unusual ages for free agents, and I don't know that it changes the narrative completely. We've seen these kinds of players succeed in free agency, and of course Arenado get his money in an extension as well, but we've seen lesser tiers of players, lower tiers of players suffer in free agency, and I can name a number of guys who did not fare well in that regard. But these two players, we said all along, 26 years old, they should get paid. They did.
Ken, just reiterate, what surprises me is there's nothing cute here, right? There's no opt-outs. It seems like, yeah, is this like a statement saying, no, Phillies, Philly for life, this is it, we're in the brand now, Bryce Harper, Philadelphia Phillies?
That will be something that different people will interpret in different ways, Brian. And certainly Bryce's camp will say he wanted that long-term commitment, that long-term marriage. Others will say he wanted the 330 and he was willing to accept whatever else he had to. No opt-outs for one, to get the 330. Doesn't really matter. The Phillies got their man, and ultimately, this contract will be either successful or not successful based on how Harper performs. But the AAV is something I'm sure others will say, wow, only $25 million a year for Bryce Harper, only in baseball terms. That's pretty good from the Phillies' perspective.
Kenny, I'm going to throw you a hook right here. 13 years, National League club. Did the Philadelphia Phillies get the jump start on this DH in both leagues things moving forward?
Bill, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a great question. And certainly by the time this deal is over, and probably well before, there will be a universal DH. I hear Brian in the background sighing and
such
hissing.
bad news. Yeah.
Well, it's reality, and it's coming, a universal DH. I don't know if it's coming in the next CBA. Most likely it is, or somewhere beyond. But Yes, that will give National League teams now and in the future more comfort in signing players, position players, to these kinds of deals.
I should know that Bill Ripken's going to get his agenda in here somewhere, even with that.
It's not agenda.
From the Grand Poobah of agenda.
Yeah, I know, right?
Can you believe that?
All right.
Wow.
Perhaps at times I'm guilty of that as well. Harper, though, even what we know, Kenny, about the age curve now and that it's basically straight downhill after 28, I don't know, age 36, 37, and 38 for Bryce Harper, it's kind of easy to see him at least hitting home runs at that age. And that's the tail end of a 13-year deal. Your thoughts on
Brian,
that?
did you just say players go straight downhill after
The age curve is like this. Yes, that's where it's going now.
I would challenge that assessment. And
You can challenge it all you want. All right.
Yeah, well, sure. No player is good after age 28.
It's not good. It just it declines. That's what the market says.
Right.
That's what
Bryce
happens
Harper,
with players.
Yes, still can be hitting home runs at 36, 37, 38. The Phillies are getting, and you know this, Brian, we are in agreement on this, a likely Hall of Famer. A player who almost certainly now will go into the Hall of Fame in a Phillies uniform if everything goes according to the way we think it will go.
Kenny, great stuff. Thanks for the And the Phillies have agreed to a deal. It's been reported by John Heyman, Jeff Passan, or Ken Rosenthal. 13 years, $330 million. Todd Zalecki, he covers the Phillies via MLB.com. Bryce Harper's deal with the Phillies, 13 years, $330 million. The length of the deal spreads out the cash flow and lowers the AAV, which is important as the Phillies try to sign future talent. So let's bring in Todd. And Todd, just to expand a little bit more on that, because, you know, when it first came out, we were thinking 10 years, $330 million, $33 million a year compared to just over $25 million a year. That's a huge difference. And as you mentioned, it does give the Phillies front office some flexibility now to continue, not only this year, but down the road, to be able to bring in more players to help Bryce Harper and the Phillies see if they can attain to reach that World Series championship they're on the hunt for.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of these negotiations. Everybody, I guess, all from the very beginning, and especially since Manny Machado signed his 10-year deal, everybody assumed it was going to be a 10-year deal for a higher AAV. But as the Phillies looked at these negotiations, they love the idea of spreading it out a little bit over time. And that AAV being lowered, it could come in handy down the road. I mean, think about this. There's been talk in Philly for years that 2 years down the road, you know, could the Phillies take a run at somebody like Mike Trout? Now they have a little bit more flexibility in terms of a luxury tax threshold down the road if they wanted to do that, or if they want to extend Rhys Hoskins at some point, or if they want to bring in another starting pitcher at some point. So those things I think were key in this deal. Bryce Harper ended up getting the biggest contract, overall contract in baseball history, and the Phillies got a little bit something from their point of view in that extra financial flexibility.
Yeah, your thoughts, Todd, on no opt-out, especially what we've seen in the last few years with the superstar player.
Yeah, that to me was interesting. Now, I had heard, you know, there have been reports off and on that you know, it was a sticking point, and I was told just a few minutes ago that had been kind of a sticking point. But the fact that there's no opt-out, I think means that Bryce, once he signs somewhere, you know, he kind of wants to be locked in. He doesn't want to have to risk, you know, being locked out of anything. So, you know, they spent a lot of time on this. I'll be honest with you. I think earlier in the week, the Phillies were very confident that they were going to sign Bryce because they thought they had the biggest offer on the table. And then that Giants news broke yesterday, and I think there's some pessimism or some doubt kind of started to creep into the ballpark. And then this morning, I heard that it kind of ramped back up again. So I don't know what kind of changed, if the Phillies just stepped it up or if Scott Boras came down. But I'll tell you what, the buzz in the ballpark here at Spectrum Field was pretty cool. You know, you could kind of hear Phillies fans start going, they got Bryce, they got Bryce, they got Bryce. And, you know, it kind of started percolating from, you know, whoever happened to have their phone out. People have had tweet notifications on their phone. It's pretty coal.
Todd, how much pressure was on this Phillies front office after missing out on Machado? And it was thought of that because Matt Klentak had known Manny Machado for years, that he was probably going to be the guy in terms of whether it be Machado or Harper. They miss out on Machado. How much pressure was on this organization to deliver in a big way here?
I think there was a lot of pressure. You know, there was a lot of pressure. And I think it started the fact when the Phillies, you know, started shedding payroll over the last few years in this rebuild. And then especially once Phillies owner John Middleton made the, we might be a little bit stupid in how we spend their money. He was joking when he said it. He couched it immediately after, said, we're not going to be too stupid about it. But that was kind of the, how many times was the word stupid money used this offseason? It was used every day. It was used every day in Philly. It was used every day nationally. And I think the Phillies, once Machado fell off the table, Phillies fans really geared up for it. You better go out and get Bryce Harper. I think ownership understood that there would be some really upset Phillies fans if they didn't get him. So, did that maybe impact them a little bit and push them a little bit harder towards a resolution? Perhaps. I do definitely think it was in the back of their minds, though.
Todd, your Nats got Corbin, among others, Dozier, Gomes, Suzuki. Mets got Cano, Diaz, Ramos. Braves even got Josh Donaldson on a one-year deal. But the Phillies get Real Muto, Segura, McCutchen, Bryce Harper, position players. We won't even go into the bullpen yet. Is that the kill shot?
Well, you know what? I was looking at the PECOTA projections just the other day, and the Phillies were at 85 wins. I think the Mets were at 87, the Nationals were 89, and I talked to Mike Petriello, at MLB.com and said, if they get Harper, where does this put him? He says, it kind of makes them co-favorites right now with the Nationals. It might even put them a little bit ahead. So I think it takes the Phillies, though, there's no doubt about it. It takes them from NL East title contenders to NL East favorites or co-favorites, and certainly once you start talking about NL East co-favorites, you start talking about, this team has a very good shot at maybe going to the World Series.
Yeah, you have to be conservative, of course, but okay.
Sure.
They did pretty good now in the offseason. Todd Zalecki, thank you, Todd.
Bryce Harper signing with the Phillies broke during the middle of their game here against the Orioles in Clearwater, and it didn't take long for the news to make its way into the Phillies clubhouse. Veteran Andrew McCutchen said he found out from his young son, Steele.
He told me right when I got him. He went, I was like, oh, okay. He signed, huh? So, yeah, I can understand his language. Not too many people can, but, yeah, he let me know pretty early.
Pretty exciting news, huh, Kutch?
Yeah, it's very exciting for us. Yeah, it's a microphone. It's very exciting. It's happy he was, able to get a deal done and get one done here. So, of course, we're all excited. Everyone here is going to be overly excited. And, looking forward to him tagging along with us.
So if the players who were not in the game at the time of the reported Harper signing found out about this on their phones or on TV, how did Gabe Kapler and the players in the game find out? Well, believe it or not, from fans sitting right here where I am behind the dugout.
We had some fans behind us who were sharing kind of moment-by-moment tweets with us. And we were getting literally like 4 fans right behind where we were sitting telling us terms and, who was tweeting what. We're like, well, who's making the reports? We got to make sure that this person is credible.
This lineup all of a sudden became very dangerous.
Yeah, no doubt. We see it in spring training right now. The guys we've added to the team has been the best at their positions for years, and then we just get Bryce, and he's been the best at his position for years too. So it's a pretty good lineup.
Definitely going to just make this team that much better, and it's going to be a threat, and yeah, it's going to be exciting for all of us, everywhere we go.
If Bryce Harper were to be a part of our lineup, sky's the limit for him. Really no ceiling. We saw what he could do in 2015. Arguably one of the best seasons of the last 20 years at the plate. Citizens Bank Park is kind of tailor-made for him to perform.
It's good to be a Philly now.
It's always been. Even before this, it was good to be one. It's really good to be one now.
Harper's agent, Scott Boras, talked about a couple of reasons for the 13-year contract. He said Bryce wanted to sign in a place he could be assured of playing for the rest of his career, no opt-out clauses. And also, he was very much attracted to that right field porch. With the Phillies here in Clearwater, I'm Scott Palmer.